Hello there and welcome to another day of landscape photography, even though I'm currently in this old mill building. But I've got something to show you before we head out to the countryside, and it's something I'm very excited about because all of my life, when times get tough, I think it's really important to try and just keep moving forward. And during this pandemic and period of lockdown, that's exactly what I have attempted to do, and I think to some extent I have succeeded. Just been trying to push the business forward, and that's what I want to show you right now as we make our way into this hallway, down to this door just here, and into what is now my very own small but very functional studio space. It's just one room. It's got this pretty cool big brick wall, I think, which will make for a nice backdrop to the videos that are shot indoors. I'm just very excited about it. So you might be wondering, why does a landscape photographer need a studio space? This, by the way, is going to be, I think, one of the filming angles. I've got a few things to work out, but I quite like the look of that brick wall behind me. Now, you don't necessarily need, or you definitely don't need, a studio as a professional landscape photographer, but as you know, I make these sort of indoor videos for you, and also I'm going to use this space to take the raw room to the next level, having that dedicated space to produce those high quality tutorials and masterclasses for the raw room is really what this place is all about. And on the side of that, I'll be able to create YouTube videos like this in the space as well, so they'll look better as well. It's very echoey in here at the moment because it's got this kind of cavernous roof, so I've got a bit of work to do to get the acoustics right. It doesn't sound very good at the moment. You probably might not notice if you're watching on a phone or something, but if you've got headphones on, you definitely will. So I want to get that sorted out with some acoustic panels on the wall. Now, I want it to still look good as well. I'm going to get a table so I can start filming the Raw Room podcast as well as just recording the audio, getting people to come here, be interviewed, have discussions, and I'm excited about that as well. Anyway, it's super hot in here because I've had to turn the fans off and close the windows because there's a main road just outside there, so it's getting a bit sweaty. It's a hot, sticky day. So what I'm going to do now is get out and about into the landscape, meet up with a mate as well for the first time since the lockdown began. So yeah, let's hit the road, and I'll see you in a little while, I think in the Peak District. Let's go. Right, I've arrived in the Peak District, and you've got to be careful what you wish for sometimes, because I've spent the last sort of 4 years almost trying to convince people to get outside and do some landscape photography. And since the pandemic and the lockdown has sort of eased a little bit, everybody's outside. Absolutely everyone. I don't know if I'm being unreasonable, but it feels like it's people that don't really belong outside. And there's a lot of just idiots. Some of these places where I would usually just have completely to myself, they're now just really busy. I'm being unreasonable, but maybe that's the point. Maybe if we want to live in a better world, we've all got to sacrifice something. And if having these environments to myself is one of them, then I guess I will just have to accept that. However, I am thinking about photographing these trees here. Now, I have photographed them before in the mist. You may remember that. They're just a really nice, interesting group of trees that look a bit like a family. And on that day, I had perfect separation from the background and they look really good. But today, I need to figure out a way to, again, separate them from the background. So, kind of thinking if I get a bit closer this way and get it down a bit and see how they go above the horizon a bit, that might work because it's a nice view and there's a bit of haze behind it, so that will separate it a little bit. And if I use a slightly bigger aperture, that might help as well. So I'm going to set the tripod up and then we'll discuss it a little further. Right, so I'm set up for my shots. Camera is quite low down, so I can shoot through these ferns and things in the foreground, but it's mostly so I can, as I go down, the trees go up in the frame and start to rise above the horizon. I've got some reasonably interesting clouds. It is quite a blue sky. There's a good chance of a thunderstorm later as well, actually, which I've kind of got my fingers crossed for the drama of it. But the main issue I'm having here is isolating these trees from the background. And that's why getting down low and bringing them above the horizon is going to work. The two trees on the right there, they're the ones I'm having a problem with, the smaller trees, because they're not above the horizon and I'm kind of losing them in the background. But it still looks nice. And the haze and the view behind the trees is also quite interesting. Settings wise, I'm at f8, ISO 100. I've bumped the shutter speed up to 1/320th of a second because it's very windy. The leaves and the branches are moving around quite a lot, so I need that extra shutter speed. I've focused in, I've composed just with the trees kind of with a nice bit of breathing room within that frame, and I think that's going to work. If you're ever having trouble like this where you can't separate stuff from the background, one good tip is because we're bringing the 3D world down into the 2D world and we can see 3D, so I can see that the background is much further away, but if you just cover one eye you then have 2D vision essentially. Your brain still fills it in, but by covering one eye it gives you a better idea of how the image will look or how the final print will look. So that's it. Let's just have one more look through the viewfinder and shoot away. 2-second timer, a little bit of creative editing, and I think it'll be decent enough, at least for the start of the day when it's still, what, like 5:30. So it's still quite bright, but yeah, okay. Right, so I'm set up for another shot, as you just saw on the drone there. It's just fantastic to be out with a mate today. Doing landscape photography by yourself is obviously good. You get time to think and reflect, but it's also good to do it with a mate. And now that things have eased a bit, it's nice to be out with someone again. It isn't, however, turned out to be the best conditions for photographs today. It's very blue sky now, but I don't really care, because when I get conditions like this, I don't think it means that you have to give up. You never know what could happen later on as the sun starts to set, and there's also little things you can do to make a shot work, and I think I may have done that now. It's a case of trying to find something that's going to work with the light. In this case, I'm lucky enough to have these crags. What they are doing is sort of jutting out from the main cliff, and there's trees and other shrubbery growing out of the side of the cliff, and the way the sun is catching it, it's catching the trees but not the cliff. It's that classic kind of shot of isolating the tree from the background using the contrast. Now, I've shot something quite similar to this before in Wales, where I did virtually the same thing, and that's all I'm doing today. I do have the camera in a vertical position. I don't use an L bracket, so please don't give me a hard time about that. I've got it positioned so I've sort of filling the trees in the frame basically, and I've got a little bit of the rock underneath the tree because I love the detail of it. It almost just makes it feel like you start at the bottom of the frame with that rock and then you rise up and a tree literally grows out of that rock. I've then got it zoomed in to roughly to just under 200mm because I want to get as much of that tree in there as possible, or all of the tree in there, but then not get too much of the highlights around the tree. So I want to get those darker, shadowy background areas to really make that contrast work for me. And I think I've just about managed to do that. I've got 1/200th of a second. I'm trying it with different apertures because I'm a fair distance away from it. It's quite a flat image, so I should be okay with f4, which I'm trying at the moment. I'll go up to f8 as well, just to make sure I get that depth of field right. But the reason I want to bring the aperture down, or the number down, is so I can up the shutter speed to freeze those leaves and maintain that lower ISO. Let's go ahead and fire that off. And I mean, straight on the back of the screen there, I'm getting some lovely contrast. So I think, let's have one more look at it. That's going to work out all right, I think. Beautiful spot though, so no complaints whatsoever. Not every shot has to be perfect. Right, we've arrived at the incredible Winnets Pass. Very famous place in the Peak District. I've been here before, again, as you may remember. I'm going to take a similar shot to last time, but I'm a big proponent of shooting the same thing over and over again because you never know what the conditions are going to do. Last time I had an incredible sunset. Today, I'm hoping something will happen. I'm hoping the sun will come back. think it will in a second, but a great spot to finish the day. But we're going to try something a little bit different now. I'm going to hand the camera over to Lyle, who you may remember from our wild camp in the Lake District, and he's going to film me as I take the shots. Let's try something a bit different today as we move forward. So we've got the scene in front of us, with the road winding its way through it, leading us in to the shots. And then the sun is obviously in the shot at the moment. That may dip behind a cloud. I'd like to get it when it's a little bit lower. You get less flare, you get more colour in the sky, in the clouds, hopefully. There's some clouds developing, I'm not sure what's going to happen with that. We'll just have to wait and see. I'm going to put a circular polarizer on. Reason being for that is it might pull out a little bit more definition in the clouds. It's also a little bit hazy down below, so it'll help just to cut through the haze a little bit, really. So just attach that on and looking through the viewfinder, focusing, and that just takes a little bit of the haze off, puts a bit more definition in the clouds. It's subtle, it's not going to make much difference, but it's looking okay. I'm just going to go with the horizon on the rule of thirds at the top, and then just trying to use the shape. We've got the shape of the bank here, just using that as kind of a frame basically for the image. It is quite flat across the rule of thirds with Mamtor in the distance there, which is not necessarily always the most appealing thing, but once I raise the shadows on this area down here and try to balance it a little bit, I could use an ND grad, but I'm just going to bracket. Sun's dying down a little bit now, so bracketing 2 stops either side.
So what are you on right now? F11?
F11, 1/30th of a second, ISO 100. Let's have a little look at that. So that one's exposing for the foreground there. That one's probably a little bit blown out still.
But you could probably break them up.
Yeah, I might go a bit more under.
Yeah.
Let's try 1/50th, 1 stop less. Because you can bring quite a lot out in the shadows. That looks a bit, I mean, the shadow wise, that's still fine. Yeah, that's looking better. I mean, I don't think actually there's much flare in there because the sun's starting to dip behind. So straightforward shot. So I think if we just hang out and wait for the right moment, and that'll be it, I think. So here at sunset now, we may get something quite magical. There's some beautiful colour there. Those oranges are starting to turn a little bit more magenta. There's still that kind of mist in the air, which is actually, I think, salt, because my skin is getting very sticky. Doesn't really matter, it's been a great day. And always with my photography, I want to try and keep myself moving forward. Sometimes even though that means going back to an old place or coming back to a location that you love with a new set of skills that you might be able to use to make better photography. So I hope in this difficult period you're doing okay and even managing to move forward as well. I will see you on another one very, very soon, probably from the new studio. So see you then.